What if there was ancient life on Mars? What sounded like a conspiracy theory is now being backed by alarming evidence found by scientists when NASA's Perseverance rover drilled into an ancient riverbed in Jezero crater and pulled a rock core whose mineral patterns and organics match the kind of biosignatures that microbes leave behind on Earth. And the implications of this go far beyond Mars itself. If two planets in our solar system, Mars and Earth, developed life independently, the odds become astronomical that we are alone in the universe. And if life didn't develop independently, well, that is a whole other theory that we'll get into later. But anyway, I made another strange connection here that gives me all the chills. Okay, so decades before this finding, way back in the 70s, 80s, and 90s, the CIA ran an infamous top secret program called Project Stargate that focused entirely on remote viewing, which is just as wild as it sounds. In 1984, they tasked a viewer to go to ancient Mars, and we have the declassified transcript straight from the CIA.gov official website, where this viewer describes full-on pyramid structures and tall, thin beings hiding in hibernation chambers as their world collapses. And I know how insane that sounds, and I rolled my eyes too, until I fully read it, and I can't lie, it's been living in my head rent-free ever since. And if you know me, you know I love connecting the dots nobody else is talking about. So come with me as we first break down exactly what Perseverance found, what a potential biosignature actually means, and why the team spent a year trying to disprove it and still can't find an explanation. Then we're diving headfirst down the rabbit hole into Project Stargate, what remote viewing is, what the CIA thought that they were doing, and what actually went down in this session on an ancient Mars civilization. I'm your host, Shelby, and this is Chill Seeker. So let's go. Okay, so before we get into it, I just have to shout out my brother, Paul Hain, for being an extremely impressive astrophysicist and planetary scientist who worked at NASA for many years and at one point was one of the first people to receive and view the images that were sent back from a Mars rover that he designed instrumentation on. He also did his PhD dissertation at Stanford on snow clouds on Mars, and has also since published articles in scientific journals on this subject. So I feel a personal connection to this and just had to plug him for a minute because I'm so proud of him and everything he does. But anyway, now I want you to picture an ancient river on Mars long gone to dust. The Perseverance rover noses into its dried bed at Jezero crater, bites out a sliver of reddish mudstone, and inside that core, nicknamed Sapphire Canyon, the team sees something eerily familiar. Tiny leopard spot rings where vivianite and iron phosphate, halos greigate, and iron sulfide and organic carbon threaded through the rock. On Earth, that exact chemistry and texture combo shows up in waterlogged, low-oxygen muds where microbes are busy breathing iron and sulfur. It's the kind of mineral graffiti that life leaves behind. Like, it's literally the bacteria equivalent of spray painting "Josh was here" on an overpass. But anyway, NASA's wording is careful. This is a potential biosignature, not 100% proof. But the scientists did the most boring but critical part, spending months trying to kill the idea with non-biological explanations, and they still couldn't find a cleaner geological story that fits the patterns. The rover's instruments, Pixel for X-ray chemistry and Sherlock for organics, mapped the evidence in place. And now the real answer is going to happen upon sample return when it's brought back to an Earth lab that can slice this thing thinner than a human hair and interrogate every single atom. But if this is all confirmed, here's the more alarming question. We're no longer asking, was there life on Mars? Instead, we have to ask, how many other riverbeds in the universe hold the same secret? Because if life sparked twice in one little solar system, once on Earth and once on ancient Mars, that's not a fluke, that is a trend. And statistically, it means the odds our universe is quiet drop off a cliff. There are hundreds of billions of stars in our galaxy and hundreds of billions of galaxies beyond that. If the recipe for life can run on two neighboring worlds bathed by the same sun, it becomes astronomically likely that we are far from alone. That's just the facts. All right, now on to the truly bizarre CIA-Mars connection. From the late 70s through the mid-90s, the US ran a real program, Project Stargate, to test remote viewing, psychic perception at a distance, or the attempt to describe a hidden or distant target using only your mind. In 1995, Congress found out about this program and forced an outside evaluation. This part is really messy and I will definitely do a deep dive in the future, but basically the program was officially shut down and eventually some of the documents were declassified, which is why we know about any of this in the first place. Now, I personally don't think it all simply vanished. I suspect that this project fragmented and went deeper underground. People point to missing Pentagon money as proof of black budgets. And I mean, the government absolutely did spend real money on psychic psi work, roughly $20 million across 2 decades. And something tells me they didn't just give it all up. And the claims haven't stopped. In the last year, you've heard Jake Barber and other whistleblowers talk about psionics and UFO programs, with psionic teams calling or even captaining craft. And don't worry if you haven't heard of this, I'll cover it in a future episode. And of course, these are allegations, not confirmed by public documents, but they've aired on News Nation and across podcasts and socials, and Barber says that he would testify under oath. Believe it or don't, but the conversation is clearly happening. That's all I'm saying. But anyway, let's get to the fateful session about Mars. I want to remind you that this transcript is taken directly from the CIA's website under declassified documents and is titled Mars Exploration, May 22, 1984. So on that day, a government monitor sat a remote viewer down with a sealed target in an envelope. The viewer was just verbally given the coordinates and didn't know that these coordinates were Mars until after the session. But not just Mars roughly 1 million years BC, and they didn't know that either until after. So anyway, keep that in mind. Things open with a jolt. Quote, "An oblique view of a pyramid or pyramid form. Very high, sitting in a large depressed area, yellowish, ochre colored." Then a jump in time. "Severe dust storm, after effect of a major geologic problem." Before the cataclysm, the viewer describes megalithic geometry, walls and planes carved on a colossal scale, and something like a canyon complex whose sides are cut into rooms. Quote, "Huge sections of smooth stone, like a rabbit warren. The ceiling is very high, walls very wide. Elsewhere, at the end of a very large road, there's a marker with a Washington Monument overlay, like an obelisk." This transcript reads like a tour conducted across an empty world. But then, beings, or shadows of them. "A perception of a shadow of people, very tall, thin. I just keep seeing very large people, thin and tall, wearing some kind of strange clothes." The monitor moves him poleward. The viewer sees pyramids again and suddenly understands their purpose. "They're like shelters from storms. They're designed for that. Inside different chambers, strictly functional, hibernations, storms, savage storm, and sleeping through storms." Suspend your disbelief and just let that sink in. Just imagine it in your head. He moves closer to the inhabitants. "Very tall, again, very large, light, cut to fit clothing. Their verdict on themselves is devastating. They're ancient. They're dying. They're looking for a way to survive and they just can't." Finally, he sees a small group of these beings trying to escape. "Looks like the inside of a larger boat, rounded walls and shiny metal." And where do they go? "A really crazy place with volcanoes and gas pockets and strange plants, from the frying pan into the fire, but a lot of vegetation." The session ends. The monitor calls the viewer back to the room, and the envelope is open with the target revealed. The transcript gets filed away until it's declassified years later. Whew. Is any of it true? The document doesn't and can't say, but the paper trail is real and the images are unforgettable. And supposedly, the remote viewer had no idea that he was supposed to be viewing ancient Mars, which would make this even more bizarre if it were totally fake, since from everything I've read, most remote viewing that they did was focused on locations on Earth. Read alongside today's headlines of Perseverance's potential biosignature etched into Martian mud, and this transcript feels like an echo from a different era. A dying world, pyramids as storm shelters, tall beings in hibernation. Suddenly, life on Mars doesn't seem so ridiculous. Believe it, doubt it, either way, it dares you to ask what Mars once was, and what we're about to prove that it still remembers. Now, I want to get back to our idea that life may have developed independently on Earth and on Mars, and that would be an absolutely crazy finding all on its own. But what if life didn't develop independently? What if life on Earth somehow came from Mars? You know, a lot of people in the UFO community theorize that what we perceive as aliens or NHI, non-human intelligence, might have created life on Earth, and I'm not saying that I believe this at all. But it is certainly an intriguing and disturbing thing to think about. And of course, there is a more plausible explanation for life traveling between worlds. Rocks blasted off Mars carrying hardy microbes that later seeded Earth, which is called the lithopanspermia hypothesis, and it is scientifically plausible. We already do have Martian meteorites on Earth, and scientific models suggest that some microbes at least could survive the trip. But what if those Martians somehow made it here? Anyway, I don't know. It's just a crazy thought. Here's where I'm leaving you tonight. A robot bit into a dead river on Mars and pulled up a core that looks like something once lived there. Not proof, but close enough to make your stomach turn. And on the other hand, in a dusty CIA file, we have a voice calmly talking about pyramids as storm shelters and tall beings trying to survive the end of their world. I don't know if that happened. I do know that I won't get it out of my head. So, what do you think this adds up to? Did life spark twice under the same sun? Did it hitch a ride here on a shard of Mars, or are we looking at a story that's bigger and weirder than either of those? Drop your take in the comments, and if you liked this episode, please subscribe to our channel on YouTube and give us a thumbs up and leave a comment to make my day. You can also find our free Patreon at patreon.com/chillseeker and follow us on social media at chillseekerpodcast on Instagram and at chillseekerpod on TikTok. And leave us a 5-star rating if you're listening on Apple Podcasts or Spotify. By the way, once we reach 20 Patreon subscribers, I'm going to start releasing bonus episodes. I think we're at 10 now. So if you want to go join, very soon I'll have some bonus content on there that won't be on YouTube. Thank you so much for listening, and I'll see you next time. Bye.